Hello loves, happy Sunday to you. So here she is. Oh, this was just this was unbelievable, and I'll talk to you about all of this in a second, but first I want to put my word down, and I'm not quite, I want to add a couple of things. The texture on this background, by the way, is divine. So I'm putting my word down, hope, and I want to, of course, muddy that up. So I am digging into, I've got my Neo colors out, which I have used a lot on this piece, and I am learning to love them and just have fun with them. So let me dab this off here. I'll give it maybe a little bit of charcoal if it dries in time. Okay. So what I think I want to do is I want to add some speckles, but like in purple. Something different. So let's grab, and I wish I could talk and paint at the same time. I'm just not very gifted that way. I tend to talk with my hands. Obviously, you know that. So it's hard for me to do both. These are already kind of whimsical, and so that's why I'm going with the splatters. One, to add interest, and two, to add to the watercolor effect. And I'm going to dab some of these off here in a sec. Alright, that's plenty. Plenty. I'll dab some of these off here. That looks pretty dang good. Oh. I want my word there, but not really there. So that looks good. Okay. So, man, I have made a mess. You know it's a good day painting when you have made a mess. Okay, so trying to, this has been over a couple of days of this because of how this came about. So I'm trying to so I put down, so I used the collage pack, the entire collage pack from Sunday Inspiration 410, I believe it is. But it was all the watercolor pieces, and then it was the background papers from a vintage floral book. So I will have that listed, but it's all the flowers, and I cut them out and used them. So the vintage flower book pieces were the background, and then I just got real sloppy and messy and just did I worked with 2 or 3 stencils. Just 2, I didn't use that one. These 2, and I did them differently. I wanted it to be really messy in the background. I just needed to start the process, and I had a dream about this, and so I was going with what I dreamt, and this is how I dreamt it. So I used my brush and some watered down paint through my stencils to just get some stuff down, and then went back over it with gesso, lots of gesso on this. And my my little catalyst wedge, it's not a wedge, it's, I don't know what you call it, but it had enough of a small edge that I could get into the corners and really start defining and refining this piece. And that's kind of how I got my shape. I used Neo colors, and I used fluid acrylics. I just went back and forth trying to find this this background that I knew that I wanted. I wanted it to be watery and messy and a little bit of everything in there. And so then I, brought that gesso in and started refining the piece and really bringing that image forth, making something beautiful out of the mess. And then I cut my watercolor flowers from the collage pack and put those down and began building the actual like substance of the piece, and then adding my shading. I did a lot of gesso, and I used my Neo colors with matte medium so that they are permanent, so I didn't have to worry about them shifting or reactivating as I added new layers. And I used them with gesso as well, so just a thought, if you are using your Neo colors and you want to do continual layers, add some matte medium to them or some gesso. Let me see, what else? I really wanted to make sure that there were parts that were really light, because you can still see the script. You can see the script through the vase here, or pot. I think that's it. It wasn't really technical. It just, I knew how I wanted this to go, and I wanted to kind of follow the directions of my dream. And this is what I got. And so then I went back over it with Neo colors, and I used a sketch and wash. This is Generals. I used Conte pencil. I used my pastel stick and a black Neo color too around the edges to give it a real sketchy. I wanted it to be not super realistic. None of my florals ever really are, but I really wanted it to have this really sketchy, painterly, just like I'd done it really quick, which I wish I could have, but this took me some time just because of the story behind it. Okay, so if I didn't mention it, because this has been over a couple of days, if I didn't mention what I did, just send me a question in the description box below. I'll have all of the supplies that I used, all the colors and everything. I did use heavy gel to put down the watercolor flowers because I didn't want them to wrinkle. I wanted them to be pretty flat. Whereas I used the fluid matte medium in the background because I did want those wrinkles. I wanted that texture in the background. Okay, I think that's it. If I've done something, or once I edit the video and I'm going back through, if I've forgotten to mention something, I'll put it in the notes too. But don't hesitate to ask me questions, and the link to the blog where all the supplies and lists, supplies and details will be, further pictures and that kind of stuff will be down in the description as well, so you can see that there. Okay. So, I'm going to tell you the story behind this. Now, I hope you'll just stick with me for a second and not... Okay, so, I had to change my battery. My battery died. So now I'm going to tell you my story. So, this piece I dreamt about 3 times in consecutive nights, and that happens to me a lot. I keep a notepad by the side of my bed because it happens a lot, and sometimes I'll get a phrase, or I'll get the vision of a painting, or whatever. It happens to me. But this one was different because it was very, very specific. Now, you guys don't think I'm crazy, but I'm just sharing with you how the inspiration behind this, and for me, I find that there's a lot of deep meaning to it. So, in this dream, I am painting this painting in watercolor, and watercolor's not my thing, and I don't even have any that would be reasonable to do a nice painting with. So that's why I chose the fluid acrylics, the high flows, the Neo colors to kind of give it that watercolor effect, and then also that collage pack worked perfectly. And so in my dream, I'm making just kind of a mess in the background of with these watercolors, and I have a man in my dream telling me a story of encouragement and hope. And I don't remember all of it, but there are pieces that are very, very vivid. And so he's instructing me on how to refine and define my piece. But he says to me, he says, Shawn, don't be defined by the harshness of the world. Be refined by it. There is still kindness, there is still hope, there is still new beginnings and new normals. Those are that's the blaring message, and he begins to tell me how to define this piece and how to refine it and make it more visible instead of this mess. And I thought, oh my gosh, if that's not the story of our lives, and how so often things are just feel like a mess, and the world feels really harsh, and it and when I say harsh, I mean harsh can mean a lot of things. It can, right now, I feel like our world in general, the United States, is in chaos. Their harshness can mean loss, loss of loved ones, loss of jobs, loss of relationships. Harshness can be our critical selves, that negative voice. Harshness can mean a lot of things. And to me, this message is specifically for me, and so that's how I always work, is when I've got a message for me, I share it with you, and it usually resonates with somebody because I think we're more alike than we are different. But so as I started kind of unpacking this message, I dreamt it 3 nights in a row, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to do this. I'm gonna have to, this is for me, this is for somebody. So I went and I looked up define. And define means to explain, to have a reason, to give example, to define. And sometimes the harshness of life and the loss and the things that we have to experience cannot be defined. There is no definition for loss sometimes. There is no explanation for the things that we have to deal with. There's just none. We can summarize, we can give good thoughts, we can give good sometimes there's just no explanation as to why we have to walk the journey we have to walk. But then I looked up refined, and I'm going to pull it up here really quick. Come on. So refine means to bring to a fine or a pure state. I'll start crying. To be free from impurities, which will never happen for me. I am an imperfect, impure person, but we can strive, right? To purify from what is coarse, vulgar, debasing, to make elegant. And to me that means grace. To bring to a finer state of form. To become pure. So, to take the harshness, the loss, the betrayal, all the stuff that we have, the journey that we have to walk in this world, in our own personal lives, at work, however it is. Don't let those define you. And sometimes there is no explanation for what happens. But we can choose to let them refine us, to make us pure of heart, to make us kinder, to give more, to use the loss or the betrayal or the tragedy, to use it for a cause, to use it to help, to refine and purify our hearts. And I don't know about you, but I needed to hear that. And I needed to hear that because of that refining process that people do and we will do and we work on, there still is hope, and there still is kindness, and there still is love. And we may not understand all of it, all of what's happening in our own personal worlds, in our, political worlds, in our, all of that stuff. We may not understand it all, but we can choose to use it to make us better, to make us kinder, to make us more generous, to reach out, to love, to live in grace. And so that was my dream. And I have been sitting with that for about a week now, and it's taken me a while to even just do this piece, because every time I would start to think about the message, I would get like emotional. I'm like, oh my goodness. But I hope that you will find some comfort in today's message, in my dream. I hope you enjoyed the process. This was really fun. It felt a little different, and it could be that it felt different because of the heart space that I was coming at it from. But I hope that you will use whatever harshness you have experienced or are experienced or will come across to refine you, to make you love and be more gracious, and to use that to grow. All right, loves, I hope your Sunday is awesome, and I hope that you always, always know that you are loved.